everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Moore. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is time to talk about a Big Ten powerhouse playing a former Big 12 powerhouse now in the SEC. We did this last week a bunch with Ohio State, Texas. Now we get to do it with Michigan, Oklahoma. And this is, you remember when Ohio State and Texas had never played before, and it was a huge deal. And it was like, how have these two teams ever played before? Oklahoma and Michigan had only met once previously. This feels like, how has this series not happened before? It feels like a home and home should have happened at some point. These have been two of the, 10 biggest brands in the sport for the last 80 years. So how has this not happened? Well, it finally has happened. So that's good. That's progress.
Especially when you go back 30, 40, 50, 60 years when everybody played everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in the 80s, Michigan was playing Miami and schools like that. And of course, the stuff with USC seemingly every other year, at least with the Rose Bowl, and for this to be such a rarity. I am glad that they are playing a home and home, and we'll see how it goes next year. This year did not go so well for Michigan. Lose 24-13 in Norman, thanks in large part to the Sooners themselves, not just for the loss, but for keeping it close, because it didn't have to be this close. And Oklahoma made some plays to make sure that it was kind of throughout the game itself. Oklahoma went to the half up 14-0 and seemingly was in control. But of course, Brent Venables likes to make things more interesting than he needs to. And it did get interesting. But Tom, let's start with, I guess, where everybody is talking about, and that's Bryce Underwood, the Michigan quarterback, true freshman quarterback, who is a star in the making. In this one, he was a freshman, and he'll still be a freshman after this one as well. 9 of 24 passing for 142 yards, sacked once, inaccurate rush. I think the broadcast had him as 0 for 8 against the blitz, which is not very good. In fact, it's you could not be any worse than 0 for 8, at least with 8 blitzes. I looked in to see how was he on third down. He completed 4 of 9 passes on third down, but only converted 1 first down. And so that's a lot of what you get with a true freshman quarterback, not even taking into account the weapons that he has or doesn't have. And Tom, we talk a lot about how a true freshman quarterback is going to lose you a game. This was not that. That's not this. This was just Oklahoma being better and Michigan being off in a number of ways, even aside from a freshman quarterback.
Well, Michigan was just limited offensively. You could only do so much if you don't really have the threat of a downfield pass, and they really didn't outside of a couple sort of isolated cases, which we can get into later. He didn't have his main weapon in Marlon Klein. He was out with an ankle. You had, the offensive line has some issues, and Joel Heide got hurt, and that doesn't help at all. And just the outside of Donovan McCulley, there's just not a ton of weapons on the outside for Bryce Underwood. And you kind of got the sense that they were going to try and keep it as safe as they could. First drive of the game, he throws to Samaj Morgan, just like they put him in motion and just kind of dump one off to him in the flats. They were trying to keep things somewhat simple for him. He took some shots downfield that were, he had some shots downfield where it was like very clearly like there is no one within 5 yards of this pass. So, the downfield passing is going to be a little bit of a work in progress. But you can also start to see, okay, there is something there. This is not I don't know what anyone was seeing. This was you get him out on the edge. They would roll him out, get him out on the edge, and he had several downfield completions on balls like that when you don't have rush right in your face. You have a clear throwing lane. You get him out on the edge, and the defense has to recognize and respect his legs, which then potentially opens some things up behind. And so you can sort of start to see the first glimmers of, okay, I see where this is going. It's not there yet, but when you see him, he's able to make the throws. He's able to, diagnose, find the open guy, make the accurate throw. Okay, that's in there. When he's running around, looks like he's running around for his life and throwing balls that are like, I don't know where that's going. That is the game being too fast for him, which, yeah, it's his second game as a college player, and he's playing on the road against a guy who's known for having a confusing defense in a really loud environment with limited weapons. Yeah, man, that's what that looks like.
Yeah, and they were, while the game was still up in the air and they didn't have to just throw it towards the end, they ran the ball about 80% of the time on first down. Pretty predictable in doing those sorts of things. There were some inaccurate passes throughout the game, but this was just a true freshman quarterback performance against a defensive guy in Brent Venables who kind of feasts on those sorts of things and has a veteran kind of defense that can do those things and just make life difficult. There were so many instances in this one where the passing game, not on the same page. You mentioned Donovan McCulley. He had 91 yards on 3 receptions, but that was 9 targets. And there was one target where he was blocking on an RPO. There was another, I don't know if it was an option route, but he and Bryce Underwood were not on the same page. And it wasn't just those two guys. This was just you're looking at it and you're like, does everybody know the play? And so do you just put that on the quarterback? But with McCulley, I still question, he couldn't get on the field last year at Indiana early in the season, so he transferred. And I'm wondering, did we see why in this game where he's maybe not as engaged as he needs to be? Or again, is it just a freshman quarterback? And I don't know those answers. But when Donovan McCulley is your best passing weapon, aside from Marlon Klein, who was out for I think they said he had an ankle situation and must have happened in practice or at some point maybe late in the game last week. But when Donovan McCulley is your top guy, you're going to have issues. And I still get a chuckle when I think Kirk Herbstreit said Samaj Morgan, he's a playmaker in space, and it's like he's never been that. He's always been 5 yards a target guy, 5 yards a catch guy, which is insane for a receiver. He did have a nice catch and run in this one, but there was nobody defending him, so that explained it. And he had just 1 catch on 4 targets. And overall, you had like 15 receiver targets for about 140 some yards. And it's like, you got to be doing better than that, especially when you had 2 catches by McCulley that totaled about 82 yards of that. And aside from those 2 shots, like there was nothing else with this passing game.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me about Samaj Morgan is game 1 against New Mexico and then game 2 against Oklahoma. They've come right out, and he's been a big part of that first drive or the first couple drives. It feels like he had, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it felt like he had 3 or 4 catches in the first couple drives against New Mexico. And then that was it. You didn't really see him the rest of the game. And then he had the 1 catch against Oklahoma, and then it dropped a third down pass and got drilled. And then I think was done he looked like he probably had a concussion and was out for the rest of the game. But the way you see him early, I think they view Samaj Morgan as someone who is going to be sort of a little bit of a security blanket for Bryce Underwood to a certain degree, where he's not way downfield, but he's reasonably reliable in the passing game. It's not necessarily exciting. This is not the guy who is the take the top off the defense kind of guy necessarily, but he's someone who I think there might be some decent chemistry there. So you're trying to get him the ball early and have Bryce Underwood feel like, okay, you're sort of getting in rhythm a little bit. But then, he kind of disappeared against New Mexico. And then obviously the injury today or on Saturday against Oklahoma took him out of the game. But I think I could see him being, someone who's maybe a little earlier in some of the progressions, where he's someone who Bryce Underwood may try and feed a little bit more, especially without Marlon Klein out there. But you look through the passing stats and the receiving stats for Michigan, and Michigan had 3 catches for Donovan McCulley, 3 catches for Justice Haynes for -5 yards. And other than that, Shannon Goodwin, 1 catch for 25 yards, Samaj Morgan, 1 catch for 19 yards, Zach Marshall, 1 catch for 12 yards, end of list. So, you only complete 9 passes. Yeah, you're not going to have a lot of guys with a ton of catches, but it's just, that's a lot of being out there and running around and not catching a pass as a result.
Well, and he got a late hit to the head, stumbled going off the field, but then he did come back and play. He played the rest of the game after taking some time off. It's just he's invisible at times. So, you wonder, is he taking somebody else's spot? And it's like I don't know that he is, because the lack of depth, the lack of playmaking they have at that position continues to be an issue. And I don't know. I don't know if Bryce Underwood needs to set aside some of his salary to go get some receivers, like they do in the NFL. Like Tom Brady will take a pay cut and go get Randy Moss or whatever. I don't know if that's what has to happen here, but they need to get him some weapons so that he can operate. And then by the third, fourth quarter, he's bailing out. Bryce Underwood is trying not to get hit, and clearly looked uncomfortable, and that was a good job by the defense. The running game, and you had another big hit from Justice Haynes, who had a 75-yard touchdown on, I think, the first play of the third quarter. Outside of that, though, so Michigan rushed for 146 yards on 32 carries. Half of that was the 75-yarder, more than half of that. And outside of that, they averaged like 2.3 yards a carry, including Haynes himself. And that's basically what they got again out of Jordan Marshall, 9 for 28. He's not setting himself apart. He had 100 yards in the bowl game against Alabama, but he averaged like 4.3 yards a carry, which is no special thing. They need more out of the running game. You can't just rely on the home runs. I wouldn't mind seeing Bryce Underwood be used in the run game a little bit. He's not really. I know they mentioned him, that he has that ability, and I was like, are we sure? Because we haven't seen much of it yet. And if you're going to see it, this would have been a game to see it.
Well, yeah, you look at how the Ohio State ran J.T. Barrett, for example. They would run J.T. Barrett 3 times against Akron and 18 times against Penn State or Michigan or something like that. If you were going to see it, this is the game where you would see it, as you said, because the threat of the run helped them in the pass, of the quarterback run helped them in the passing game. But the fact that the quarterback run wasn't there, that I wonder if that's a reflection of how they feel about their backups. Because, Bryce Underwood pretty clearly won the quarterback battle, and there wasn't really any serious conversation about, okay, well, someone else is going to win it. And maybe that's based on salary. But if that's not based on salary, and QB2 and QB3 are way behind where Bryce Underwood is right now, then, well, that's not going to look real good, because then you don't really have the threat of the quarterback run. And also you don't have the threat of the quarterback pass. And that's when things get pretty ugly. So I wonder how much of it is a Bryce Underwood preservation thing, where they know they're going to need the Bryce Underwood run around and do something cool play to work at some point. And if you don't have Bryce Underwood because he's hurt, because you've run him too much, that kind of takes that away. So I had the same thought, that I was surprised that you didn't see him, because it felt like Oklahoma was respecting the run from Bryce Underwood. There was a play that it was like a third down play, I think early in the third quarter, where Oklahoma had a run blitz and Michigan ran right into it, but they also had a guy coming off the edge right at Underwood and, hit him right away. Just, hey, I just want to let you know, we know you're here. We recognize that. So, I don't know that the run was necessarily going to be just wide open for Michigan, but I was a little surprised that you didn't see a little bit of more of that from Michigan.
And you mentioned like the JT Barrett, even Will Howard last year, his 2 biggest rushing games were Penn State and Notre Dame, because they needed it. And however you could get yards, you get them. John Mateer, the Oklahoma quarterback, had 19 carries, and I think maybe one of those was a sack. So he was the running game in this. And I'm not saying that Bryce Underwood needs to be the running game, but I do wonder if he could help it out some, and if they will moving forward, or maybe you're saving that for Big Ten play. Who knows? One last thing about the Michigan offense. I don't know if you caught this, Tom. After that RPO that Bryce Underwood threw to Donovan McCulley, then you see on the sideline, ESPN showed Underwood and Justice Haynes like getting into it a little bit. Haynes walking away and Bryce Underwood saying, trying to get his attention. And these are the 2 highest paid players on your team right now, I would assume. We know Bryce Underwood, and then Justice Haynes didn't come from Alabama for free. And it was just interesting that they made up, later on. But I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, there was that on that RPO, there was nowhere for Justice Haynes to go. So I don't know that he should have gotten it. And so I don't know what the issue was there. And Donovan McCauley certainly was not. He was blocking. He was not prepared for reception, which if this is an RPO, you might want to be prepared for a reception. So I don't know if they'll talk about it today, being Monday when they do all of their recapping. I don't know if they talked about it after the game, but it was not nothing. I don't know how much of a something it was.
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of frustration more than anything else, because I would do the same thing you were trying to do, which is diagnose, okay, what are they actually arguing about here? Because I understand why they're frustrated, but was that, did Underwood get the call wrong and Haynes is upset that he threw it when it was not, I don't know. Because like you said, someone was right there to hit Haynes right away. So it wasn't like, oh man, if they just handed that ball off, he was gone. So yeah, I don't know what that was. But, you understand why they're frustrated at that point. They, I think they had grand visions of going on the road and looking great. And, oh, here we go. This is the first step of the first step on the path to greatness. And it very much did not look like the first step on the path to greatness for long stretches of the game on offense. I was listening on the radio on the way home from the Ohio State game and heard that that whole thing happen. And then going back and watching it, yeah, it's one of those things where when you're winning, that means you're fiery. And when you're losing, that means you're a jerk. And, they lost game one. And I always go, you remember former Iowa quarterback Drew Tate? Like Drew Tate was fiery until they had a 7-5 season, and then he was a jerk. So, you've got Bryce Underwood is 18. I think we all remember being 18. So, and Bryce Underwood is also someone who, how many times in your life do you think Bryce Underwood has failed? Like, I don't get the sense that happened for Bryce Underwood very much in high school. So, this is a frustrating situation and you're confused and you're probably a little overwhelmed. And yeah, I mean, I get it to a certain degree. I'm perfectly willing to write that off the first time. If this becomes a recurring thing, then you have the prima donna conversation. I don't think you're anywhere close to that. I think it's just probably first game on the road, struggling, frustrating. You can kind of write that off. You have seen plenty of players on all sorts of teams yelling at each other on the sidelines over the years, and it doesn't necessarily turn into and then the season melted down. Like I don't think you're anywhere close to that kind of conversation. I take pretty much everything that Underwood didn't do or all the negatives for Underwood and go, yeah, man, it's a freshman in his first start on the road in a hostile environment against a coach who is really good at confusing you and making life difficult. That's kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, I don't take him going after Justice Haynes. It looked like he was trying to get things straightened out, and Haynes maybe didn't want to hear about it at that point. Defensively, Tom, this is my first real time watching John Mateer. I watched him a little bit last week in the lead up to this one. This dude is a maniac. He should not be street legal. He is dangerous. He, for both teams, like you never know what you're going to get. He is a Johnny Football 2.0, basically, in terms of he'll throw it wherever to whomever, and maybe you'll catch it, maybe you won't. He made some plays. He made some ridiculous throws. He made some throws that kept Michigan in the game, including an interception. There was another one where if he would have put more air under it, he threw it as a laser. Jair Hill tipped it and then caught his tip and then got it knocked out. That if he would have just put some touch on it, it would have been a touchdown. There are game situations like that where he is Heisman voters are going to love him. And some coaches are probably going to be crazy and hate what he does at times. He's fun to watch, fun as heck to watch, which I think is good for Oklahoma right now because it's been a while since they've been fun. But he gave Michigan some problems. And what I saw from the Michigan secondary is what I said last week, that the coverage is a concern. And you saw those issues in this one, and Mateer couldn't take advantage of all of them. He took advantage of some of them. But Michigan is just playing so many safeties right now. They still miss Rod Moore. I think at some point you need to find the guys who are the best guys and play those. And if you've got 5 guys that are all the same, that's not good either. And I think they need to figure out exactly who they are with their safeties and stop playing so many, because you I would rather let somebody get a feel for things. And I think also they've just got a bunch of strong safeties. I'm not sure if they've got any free safeties, any center fielder types.
Yeah, I had a lot of the same stuff written down about the secondary where you'd see them make a play and it was like, oh, that was a nice, Zeke Berry had several nice plays, but then he also had one that was, they had a receiver that was 2 steps behind him on when Oklahoma was like way backed up, and you could see Wink Martindale, the way Wink Martindale's using pressure. I think Wink Martindale knows that he's not going to be able to have his secondary stand up. Like he's bringing a lot of pressure at times, and that's get the ball out so the secondary doesn't have to cover for 3-4 seconds. Just get the ball out, and he brought pressure when Oklahoma was way backed up, and the receiver got multiple steps behind him, and Brandon Hillman, to your point, was late getting over from the the sort of center field kind of position. Got over late, and I think he probably would have had an angle, but the throw from Matier pushed the receiver out of bounds. Like he caught it in bounds and then had to go out of bounds. He was a couple steps clear. He might have had a 97-yard touchdown. We'll see. I don't know what the angle was for Hillman, but yeah, I have some questions about that sort of free safety spot as well for Michigan, because it's very inconsistent. It's like, okay, they make a nice play here, but then immediately, boy, there's a lot of guys running open in the secondary, and it felt like Oklahoma did a very good job finding just the holes in the zone coverages and just being able to sitting down in a hole in the zone and having guys open by 4 or 5 yards for kind of easy pitch and catch throws. To your point on Matier, he made a bunch of those throws. He made the great throw down from deep in his own end, kind of out to midfield. He also had a couple, the Jair Hill one, the receiver had him beat, and Matier just threw a laser instead of just arcing it over, because the guy was 2-3 yards clear. Jair Hill did a nice job kind of with catching up, but that's not a ball. Jair Hill made a nice play on the ball that was thrown. That was not the ball that should have been thrown. There was a way to throw that it should have been a touchdown. And then the other one, TJ Metcalf had the interception, and that was, they had a tight end who was wide open, 20 yards down the field, 25 yards down the field. And Matier just airmailed him, and TJ Metcalf was, to his credit, there to make a nice play, made a nice play on the ball, intercepted it. But that was not, oh boy, Michigan baited him into that throw. That was just, John Matier just missed the throw. So I always, when we're doing these segments, think about, okay, well, what does this mean for Ohio State? And when I'm looking at John Matier running around and making plays with his legs and running 19 times, it's like, I don't think that means anything for Ohio State. What was interesting to me is you look at Deion Burks, who was, what did he finish with, 100 and something yards?
7 for 101.
7 for 101 and a touchdown, targeted 13 times. Like, he was very clearly the guy they were going to over and over and over again. He had 13 of their 32 targets. Who was the closest corollary on the Ohio State team to Deion Burks? Is he like a Brandon Inniss? Like, who is Deion Burks in terms of Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is he a Z? Is he a slot? Like, I guess I could have watched a little bit closer. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Tom. But like, he is a playmaker. He was not good enough to be recruited by Michigan, as he will tell you, being from Michigan. But they went after him, and it was effective. So it's like there are a lot of guys, as you're watching the Jaron Kanik, the tight end, make plays downfield. It's like, well, I could see that happening. I don't know if you mentioned the reverse flea flicker into the end zone that was just out of reach that Michigan didn't get over on. And as I'm watching, I see like Mason Curtis, the 6'5", 211-pound safety playing center field at times. I don't think that's going to work out. And then I also see him when they brought him up in coverage against a wide receiver, applying that to Ohio State. I don't think that's going to work out when you've got these safeties. Like, the only guy I think to fear here right now is Brandon Hillman, and not because of his coverage, because he will kill you. He will hit you and hurt you. And so you do have to be wary of that. But there's nobody here, and like there's no Rod Moore yet. And until once Rod Moore gets back, what is he? Like he's going to need time to get back to being Rod Moore. And it's been a long time since we've seen him be Rod Moore. Very, very good corner, very, very, very good safety a couple of years ago before he got hurt. I don't know that he ties everything together. He'll make things better, but I just wonder how much of this is we're just trying to figure this out. Jaden Mangum, who Ohio State tried to get out of the portal from Michigan State, ended up going to Michigan. He's out there some. I just don't see this as being necessarily a cohesive thing. And they'll play a bunch of guys. And Jair Hill, Zeke Berry, they're at corner. They're kind of up and down at this point. I don't know that there's anybody here that Ohio State will look at in the secondary and say, I fear that.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anyone that you're throwing, you're just staying away from in the secondary this year. And, we'll see. There's a long way to go between now and Thanksgiving weekend. One thing that I thought was impressive from Michigan was how well they controlled Oklahoma's running game outside of the QB run. You look at everyone else, other than John Mateer, who was 19 carries for 74 yards. Other than that, Oklahoma did basically nothing on the ground. 6 for 24 for Javonte Barnes, 9 for 24 for Torrey Blaylock. Jaden Ott, who I think he can't possibly be healthy because he was so good at Cal, 4 for 9. He just hasn't done anything yet, really, at Oklahoma. So I don't know if he's really 100%. But the interior of that defensive line was kind of a question for Michigan coming in, and how well are they going to hold up in the run game? That's an area where I think, front 6, front 7 for Michigan. I think they're a little ahead of where I thought they might be. The secondary is more of a question, but we can apply what does this mean for Ohio State? Ohio State has not had a ton of success running the football already. Mm-hmm. And looking at how Michigan is looking right now, it seems like Ohio State might have not a ton of success running against Michigan. The Michigan offensive line, I think, is a concern. The Michigan defensive line, I'm looking at now and going, yeah, they're probably fine.
Yeah, Trey Williams, transfer from, I believe, Maryland, had a couple of tackles for loss. One of those, he also had a face mask, a personal foul penalty that kept a drive alive. That was unfortunate. And you're seeing some more guys come together. And then, the defensive ends, we've seen them forever. And I don't know if there was a ton of pass rush in this one from them. Mateer was sacked twice, but overall, as you said, the run defense, the long run of the day was 19 yards by John Mateer. And I think you'll always take that 3.5 yard per carry average. But Mateer is just different. That's always difficult to account for that running quarterback. That's why it's an equalizer, as everybody knows. And you can spy it, you can do whatever you want, but doesn't mean you're going to stop it. And frankly, they did a pretty good job in stopping it. 19 for 74. It's like that's 4 yards a carry for your top rusher. Generally, that's going to be enough, and it was for Oklahoma this time. Overall, again, the Michigan linebackers, we should probably say Jayshon Barham did not play in the first half because he was suspended because of the targeting the week before, and Oklahoma did score 2 touchdowns in that first half without him in there. Anything else from the Michigan defense before we jump onto a strange special teams game?
Yeah, it was a weird special team game. No, I don't think so. I mean, they I know you can look at they scored 2 touchdowns in the first half without Jayshon Barham out there. They also scored a touchdown in the third quarter. In their second drive of the third quarter, they had a couple long drives, end of the third, early fourth, where Michigan really just couldn't get off the field. That last drive of the game, 16 plays, 78 yards, 8:27. That's the kind of thing where Michigan is used to doing that to other teams. That's not something you're used to seeing out of Michigan. That also felt like, well, the offense is not really holding up its end of the bargain, where Michigan's second half drives 1 play, 3 plays, 3 plays, 4 plays, 8 plays, 5 plays. So yeah, I'm going to guess the defense was a little tired when they were out there late. So I'm willing to excuse that to a certain degree, but it was a little weird watching Michigan get pushed around like that.
And then you saw in this one, the Oklahoma special teams, they roughed the punter once. They got away with at least running into him the time before that. That could have extended another drive for Michigan. So They also missed a field goal, which amazingly Dominic Zavada did as well. Missed a 32-yarder, which I didn't know was possible. But overall, like only one of Michigan's punts went 50 plus. At least two of them were in the 20. I guess that's okay. Andrew Marsh continues to be kind of aggressive in returning kicks. The receiver, and two returns for 37 yards. They get nothing out of their punt returns, and at least they didn't muff anything this week. Didn't give up anything either, which is, I guess, the biggest thing here, the biggest positive. But overall, this is another area where Oklahoma kept Michigan in the game via special teams.
Well, the first time when it was 4th and 5, and they did run into the punter. The difference between running into and roughing is, do you hit the kicking leg or the plant leg? If you hit the kicking leg, that's 5 yards, and that's, that would have been enough to give them a first down. And I was waiting for the flag and looking like, where is it? And it didn't happen. The next time they roughed him, so that gave them a first down. I thought that was an interesting time for them to be going after the punter, because it felt like they were largely in control of the game, where you could have just kind of played it safe. With Andrew Marsh returning kicks, I think you're going to see more of that, because Michigan needs to find a way to, make an explosive play, get the ball down the field, maybe score a touchdown on special teams, because they were very clearly not going to be able to sustain a bunch of 12-play methodical drives down the field. That was not going to be how they won that game. They needed to have the lightning in a bottle, Justice Haynes 75-yard touchdown and something like that. You're looking for that in the kicking game. Ohio State, over the years, when they've had these great offenses, the C.J. Stroud offenses, or Dwayne Haskins, or Justin Fields, or whoever, they haven't needed to make plays in special teams, because it's like, just catch the ball, and the odds of scoring a touchdown, whether you're on the 25 or the 35, are not materially different. Michigan, if you can get a kick return out to midfield, well, that certainly at least flips field position, if not puts you in position to, you get one first down and you're basically in Dominic Zapata's range. So I think they're going to be aggressive in that kick return game, just because they're going to be looking for something to sort of catch lightning in a bottle, like I said.
Well, and then with Oklahoma leading 21-7 and Michigan punts, Oklahoma has all of the momentum in the world after in that third quarter. They muff the punt. Michigan recovers at the Oklahoma 34-yard line, and now it's a game again. This was a game where it looked like you get the ball back, pretty soon it's going to be 28-7. Good night, and everybody enjoy the drive home. But that didn't happen again. The special teams keeping Michigan in it. Anything else from this one that you wanted to touch on before we go? I will say one last thing. The Michigan offense at one point broke a huddle with 4 seconds on the play clock. Like, not enough time.
Yeah, rewatching this game on YouTube or whatever platform it was, you hit the right arrow key and it moves you forward 10 seconds. I would hit it once and then Oklahoma would be at the line. I'd hit it 3 times and then Michigan would be at the line. So yeah, this was a limit your potential mistakes, play it cautious, don't put yourself in bad situations. That was that kind of Michigan game. And, again, with a young quarterback on the road, first start in front of a hostile crowd, yada, yada, yada. It all makes sense. I'm going to give you exactly the same speech I gave you with Arch Manning last week. Do not take Bryce Underwood and go, bust. No, like you have to be patient. Like, this is you can see the talent there. It's going to get there. It's not there yet. This is what it would have looked like. This is what it would have looked like if Tavian St. Clair was out there for Ohio State this year. This is what it would have looked like if Julian Sain was out there for Ohio State last year. True freshmen are just, no matter how talented, just not going to be ready to play this early. It is too early. The difference between your first year and your second year is enormous. And we hear this from every single quarterback we talk to over the years. The game slows down. Right now, the game's going very fast for Bryce Underwood. The game is going to start slowing down by the time Ohio State shows up on the schedule and you get sort of later in the season. Next year, I think you're going to see a very different Bryce Underwood. This year, this is why we keep saying a freshman quarterback's going to lose your game. I don't think Bryce Underwood lost them this game. He will lose them a game at some point this year, and that is just the nature of being a true freshman quarterback. You're going to just have to be a little bit patient. That's okay. You can see the talent there. It's just right now between the game going fast, the offensive line being a little shaky, and maybe not having great weapons outside, it's going to be a little bit of a process.
For sure. And he needs help. And again, 20 years since Michigan's last first round wide receiver in Braylon Edwards. We'll see if Andrew Marsh can get there. I think he's the best bet in that I don't know if he's a good bet, but I know the others aren't. So that will do it. Want to thank you for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. We would appreciate that. And of course, a 5-star rating and review on all of your podcast platforms would be appreciated. You can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up. Say hello to us there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. We'd love to talk to you there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.